today's session that we are calling How to Boost Your Literature Review with Copilot. I hope that this session will be helpful, though, for more than just lit reviews, because Copilot is a great AI tool to use for any type of research. And just to introduce myself for the recording, my name is Sarah Kyle, and I am a medical librarian at FCOM. So this session is going to be sharing about some situations where Copilot is helpful for research and for lit reviews, as well as some situations where other tools might be a better option. So our agenda for today is just going to briefly be going over what Copilot is, how to access it, and then looking into some various uses. And we should have some time at the end for questions as well. So first of all, what is Copilot? Copilot is Microsoft's Gen AI tool. They call it your AI companion. And at Belmont, this is the primary AI tool at this point that the university has licensed for the campus. There are definitely other basic AI tools, and then there's also some specialty AI tools, but Copilot is integrated within Microsoft Teams and within the general Microsoft infrastructure. So it is the tool that my understanding is that the university wants us to be using. So some of the primary features, just like ChatGPT or other similar tools, Copilot has a chat box for prompt entry or for dialogue. It can help you generate text and images in response to the prompts you give it. And it can also provide some references in terms of links to websites as well as documents. So it can be a fairly reliable source of information. In order to access Copilot, there are a couple of different ways. One way is through your Teams access. In this screenshot, you can see within the chat feature in Teams, there is a channel for Copilot. So that is one way that you can use Copilot, but you can also go to the web to use it, copilot.microsoft.com. And then from there, you can sign in with your Belmont account to access the secure version. And I should also say, I don't think I said this previously, but this secure version is different than the general personal version of Copilot. So there is one that is integrated into your university account that's secure, compliant, and is kind of private within the Belmont infrastructure, but the personal version is not. So I'm going to open up a web browser. So this is what Copilot looks like online. If you're logged in, you should see your Belmont account down at the bottom. But you can also, if you just go to copilot.microsoft.com, there is also a way to go through the whole sign-in process. And it does require the same authentication. So today we're going to look at a few different options for using Copilot for research and for literature reviews. As I prepared for this session, I did some research to look into the ways that people are using Copilot or recommending others use Copilot for research and lit reviews. And there are many different options. We're all looking for AI tools that can help us automate some parts of our life and our work. And so some of the things that are commonly coming up include things related to search strategies, both developing searches, translating searches, checking the Boolean logic of your search, finding sources, analyzing sources, helping with topic selection. And even as somebody who does research for their full-time work, it's a little bit overwhelming. And with so many different possibilities, it's worth asking which uses are truly helpful and which uses should you avoid. It's not always clear. And so from my perspective as a librarian, this presentation is going to be broken down into kind of like a stoplight metaphor. So what uses of Copilot should you probably stop or not use? What uses should be done with caution, and what we should continue to use and kind of give a green light to. And even when Copilot isn't the best fit for some of these research needs, searching, finding sources, doing scholarly text analysis, topic selection, all of that, there are some resources that I'd like to just briefly introduce you to if those are things that you are looking for. So let's start with the bad news. Copilot is not a great place to do a search. A great way to say it is that Copilot has a lot of different errors when you're trying to use it to develop a search strategy. There is a lot of redundancy in the search, so using multiple terms that mean the same things. If you are working on a PubMed search, Copilot is notorious for hallucinating mesh terms, and it's also not going to really give you the nuanced search that you're looking for. As I was practicing using Copilot for search strategies, everything was kind of too broad, too narrow, and it took a lot more time to ask Copilot to develop a search strategy for me than I could have done on my own developing it. There can be some things related to working on a search that might be helpful. You could ask Copilot to find a published search strategy. You could, if you have done a Copilot search, done a PubMed search, you could ask Copilot to check your work. And there are lots of ways that Copilot can kind of check what you have done without doing it all from scratch. And then the last thing that I would recommend with Copilot, if you are trying to develop a basic starter search, is to give it a good prompt. And this kind of goes along with using Copilot in general or any AI tools. The input that you give it, the prompt is going to be really relevant to how the output, the quality of the output is. So if you are trying to get a search started with Copilot, if you provide your research question, you might be able to get started on a search. But some of these search components I mentioned here, using quotation marks, using truncation, using Boolean logic, Copilot gets a little bit confused. So I generally would not recommend using Copilot to start your search from scratch. Also related to searches, sometimes people want to use Copilot to translate their search strategy. So if they're working on a search that they've already done in PubMed, but they want to continue their search in Embase, which uses different search terms, you might want to ask Copilot, can you help me translate my search, rather than taking the time to do that yourself. But there's kind of a lot of times where Copilot might lose some elements of your search in that. But fortunately, there is a different AI tool called Polyglot that has been developed to do that. So if you have a search that you have used in one database like PubMed, you can copy it into this search box and then just click on the different database that you want a search string for, and it'll automatically translate it into a variety of different databases, many of which we have here, like Cochrane, Embase, CINAHL. So that can be a helpful tool. And as a bonus, there's less environmental impact with Polyglot because it is a more focused and nuanced tool. A second area related to searching that you may want to use Copilot with caution and maybe think about a different resource is related to your Boolean logic, which I know people's eyes can kind of glaze over sometimes when you talk about Boolean logic, but just like things related to math, it's really important to make sure everything lines up with your search or the database you're searching. Like PubMed is going to be really confused about what you're asking. So sometimes when you are creating a more complex search in PubMed or another database, there's lots of different quotation marks and brackets and parentheses, and also things like and, or, and not. And sometimes these can get really confusing, especially the longer your search goes. So sometimes we get search errors like this one in PubMed, and we're not really sure where that error is coming from. So people have tried to use Copilot to fix this, but sometimes it brings up other errors that weren't there in the first place. So like this one, I had an example that was related to lung cancer, and I asked Copilot to help me adjust it, and then it changed it to and not, which isn't something that made sense. But there is a different tool, a website called Med Syntax, and if you copy in your citation, or not your citation, copy in your search strategy, it will read through it, let you know what your errors are, and then give you a correct way to adjust your search. So that can be really helpful, especially when you're working on longer searches. Moving on. So a third way that people sometimes try to use Copilot is to use Copilot to find sources. And in some ways, this seems really straightforward because Copilot is helping you compile information, helping you search the web. So it seems like you should be able to tell it, like I did in this example prompt here, that I was doing some research about hypertension in adolescents. Can you come up with a search strategy and then find some academic peer-reviewed journal articles? So it seems like you should be able to do something like that. But based on some of these past issues that we've talked about with Copilot not being the best source for understanding Boolean logic or developing a search strategy, trying to have Copilot put all of these things together doesn't always work very well. So sometimes people have had some success with this, and that's why we do see some published research papers that talk about using Copilot or a similar AI tool as part of their search. But overall, it's probably not going to be the best way for you to find the results you're looking for. So there's a couple of things that I would suggest with this. So first of all, if you are wanting Copilot to help you do research, being really specific about what you're looking for is really important. So if you can provide Copilot with your research question, tell Copilot that you're asking for a search strategy and that you want to see that search strategy, And then once Copilot has done some of that research for you, it'll be on you to verify that the sources that they're giving you comes from PubMed, comes from Google Scholar, or whatever online database that you're trying to use. And Copilot isn't going to be able to search library databases that require a login. So they're only going to be able to search things that are freely available online. And if you are going back and forth with Copilot on this search, you might find that you need to continually reprompt Copilot to not forget the instructions that you're giving it, and make sure that Copilot isn't like generalizing things and that it's staying focused on the task that you're giving it. So this might be something that you could do, but I probably would not recommend it for really thorough, in-depth research. But an alternative is always, as faculty and as students at FCOM, this is a tool that we can do for you. So the library does offer search services to faculty and to students. So we can sit down with you and help you work on your search, help you find resources, especially for faculty, and kind of step in and do this work where Copilot might not be the best source of information. So with all of that bad news, or maybe not the most promising news, I don't want you to walk away from this thinking that Copilot has no use for literature reviews or for assisting with research. There are some things Copilot can be really good for. So one area that I found Copilot to be really helpful is to help me think through topic selection and exploration of topics, especially when they're new to me. So you can use Copilot to brainstorm something that you're wanting to work on. It can be really helpful if you prompt Copilot to help you find a unique topic or a unique approach to a topic. So Copilot is not going to be able to search and make sure that there's absolutely no research that has been done about a particular topic, but it will help you think through gaps in the research that you can think through further and develop into a research question. So there are a couple of ways that I might recommend using Copilot for this topic selection and exploration. And the first one, as you can see on this slide, is that you can prompt Copilot with a broad topic and then ask Copilot to identify several areas of interest or gaps in current knowledge. So Copilot can, like this prompt has, analyze the topic of hypertension in adolescents. What are the most significant unanswered questions, areas of ongoing debate, or missing information that I could research? And then I asked Copilot to provide me with 5 potential topics to explore and provide your reasoning for each, along with some citations. So you're kind of going into this knowing Copilot is not an expert with their searching or with everything related to making sure the search is perfect, but just because it's not an expert level search doesn't mean that it can't be useful in thinking through what the broad research being done on that topic is. And then for times where you want to get started on something new, but you're not really sure what that is, or you're wanting to get into new areas of research interest, Copilot can ask you questions, kind of play that interested colleague role and help you think through what you know and what you might be interested in. So sometimes we need other people to ask us questions, and you could kind of treat Copilot as a tool to do that. It can always be more fun or enjoyable to have a colleague talk with us about research, but for the times that that's not an option, or for the times where you might not have a colleague who is knowledgeable about that, Copilot can be kind of a good, I don't want to say person, but a good role to kind of play that interested colleague for you. So you could prompt Copilot with something like, I would like you to ask me questions to help me identify a novel topic that I can develop into a research question. And then if you tell it, like, generally, I would like to investigate type 1 diabetes or hypertension or whatever your topic might be, Copilot can ask those questions and help you think through what you might be interested in. And so you can dialogue back and forth. And then to continue on with the thoughts about topic exploration, Copilot can also be a source for finding background information to further explore your topic. So again, this isn't going to be the most thorough, best sources out there, but if you're doing some preliminary reading, Copilot can be a helpful tool for that. Another useful role that Copilot can play in research is helping you think through keyword and synonym building when developing your search. So this is something that librarians have been looking for tools to work on this for a long time, as we have always worked on complex searches about topics that might be new to us or topics that we might not be an expert in. So some suggested initial prompts that I've started using when I'm working on a search about something that I'm still learning about might be things like, give me keywords of semantic similarity to whatever topic, provide synonyms for whatever topic, what other words could be used to describe this topic. And as you're continuing to work with Copilot on this, you can also provide the keywords or synonyms that you have in this aside from XYZ to include terms that you already want to use. And Copilot can also be helpful to brainstorm variant spellings, especially things related to American English versus British English, things like that. There are some things to be cautious about with this. Sometimes Copilot has given me suggested terms that have some bias or that might be inappropriate or outdated. So again, you have to think through what results is Copilot giving you and are they what you want to represent your research? And then, like I said previously, the mesh terms and the specific vocabulary for sources like PubMed are really detailed and important to have right, and Copilot does not always get the mesh terms correct. So just to recap, there are some different ways that we can use Copilot for research and for literature reviews. In the library, we really do not recommend that you use Copilot to fully develop a database search strategy, but the library is here to assist with developing that search strategy. There are ways that you can use Copilot with caution related to your search, things like translating the search to another database, checking Boolean logic, doing some scholarly text analysis, and finding sources. And last of all, we really do recommend using Copilot for selecting a topic, talking through things you're interested in, like a colleague would, and then for the keyword and synonym building when developing your search. So we have a little bit of time if you have any questions, and if you do not have questions at this time, this is a resource that I did want to mention. We have a research guide on our library website that is about AI intelligence or AI in medicine and healthcare. And so we'll be continuing to add resources to this guide. And I see a question in the chat. Are you advising, as I'm looking for gaps and utilize Copilot, I should also cross-check with PubMed since Copilot only retrieves information that are open access? Yes, I mean, I would not recommend that Copilot be the only source that you use to identify research gaps or gaps in the literature. So Copilot can retrieve information that is available on the web. It can technically search PubMed, but it's only going to be able to read the papers on PubMed that are open access or that are otherwise freely available. So research articles that require a subscription, Copilot will see that they exist, but they are not going to be able to read the article. So yes, that is definitely a nuance of that. And I feel like, well, we're about out of time, but as I was looking through my slides, I think I skipped through one of my slides. So I'll send these slides out afterwards. I don't think I talked about this scholarly text analysis, but there are some prompts that I've had some success using Copilot to help me better understand an article. So this is kind of an area of caution, but I don't want to keep you any longer beyond the time of this session. And I'm sorry that I somehow skipped this, but I will send out the slides and the recording after this session. And if any other questions come up, I would be happy to talk about that with you later. So thank you for coming and have a good rest of your day.